I'm Julianne Puente, head of school at Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico. The Academy is a leader in the world of independent schools. We honor our past while embracing the future of education. Even though I've been going to school in one shape or form for almost my entire life, I still learn something new every day. And I use that knowledge to tackle the challenges that should interest anyone who has a stake in the future we can't fully imagine. Thanks for joining me to hear about what I learned in school. Hello, everyone. I'm Julianne Puente. I'm joined here by my co-host, Associate Head of School, Christine Lenhart.
Hello.
Today, we'd like to talk about a topic that's sort of a big deal around it here at the Academy. That is our athletic program. Christine, we're into the spring trimester or the spring season of athletics, and there's an actual opportunity for us to win 6 blue trophies with softball, baseball, boys and girls track, and tennis and golf. So we're in it, which is kind of almost not typical, but our kids do really well here, season after season, about that. How have athletics changed, do you think, from when you were a student here to now? I mean, besides the size of the school, how has it changed? How has it been the same?
Well, it's an interesting question because, we've obviously grown as a school, but I've always loved the size of our school for athletics because I think there's a lot of access. So something that I think has actually been similar, before I talk about how I think it has changed, is that students have always had access to various sports. If you want to play a sport every season, you can, but we're also large enough, to what you just indicated before, where we actually do well. We have enough students at our school to pick teams and, set up different teams. One of the ways so I played 3 sports when I was here, and it was actually pinnacle to my experience here. I feel like I loved all my teachers so much, but I feel like a lot of the biggest life lessons I learned were actually through my experience with sports and just the awesome support I had from my coaches. One of the ways I think that it has changed is that, first of all, in 6-7, not having sport like cuts for sports, I think it really provides access for students to try new things that they've never tried before. I had never played a sport before I showed up here in 6th grade. I was the 3rd child, and my older siblings were busy. And so, it really did open up a world to me that I had not really experienced before. And I think that we do that even better now, just with no cut sports, so that students have the opportunity to try new things, and we just keep opening up doors for students in their exploration. Yeah. I do think that, the support and the growth and the opportunities in sports are actually very similar. Something that I think is really similar from when I was here versus now is that I feel like it's always been focused on growing as a human, and not only about winning, but how you participate, how you're part of a team, what your contribution is, like helping you figure out how to grow as an individual on the team. And so I think that we've always done that really well. I do think that we have some additional challenges now that are different from before, meaning that club sports have gained so much momentum, especially in specific areas. Yep. Like volleyball. I think soccer, if I remember correctly, soccer was already a club sport when I was here, but I didn't really know much about club sports at that time. I just think that it's so much more for students. And I think it's getting more and more challenging for students to be multi-sport athletes. I just think it's just a different dynamic that's happening. What I really appreciate is I feel like our school has tried to adjust with that. We've changed policies to try to support multi-sport athletes. We say that we support multi-sport athletes, but our policies have aligned with that. Like an example is, working with kids who are in club sports and trying to figure out how can they do both. And trying to keep the kiddo out of the middle of adults trying to figure out schedules. So, I really do appreciate all of that philosophically in supporting our students.
The club sports it does make it more challenging on the high school side of it. Also, just the perception of, the club's teams are so much better. There's this, but there's still this draw to play for your high school.
Absolutely.
And the amazing thing, I've tried to have this conversation. It doesn't really work on a high school level, but I think it's really the lessons you learn by playing with kids of varying abilities actually prepares you for what you're going to encounter in life, like when you're working or in relation. Like, not everybody knows how to shoot well, or play great defense, or a great writer, or public speaker, or you work with an array of people. And are you somebody that lifts people up and helps the people around you get better? Or are you the person who points to others' deficiencies? And I just think the athletic field is such a great place to practice.
I agree.
The other thing is, as a head of school, I wish that all of our classrooms were the same as what would happen on an athletic field. You actually are doing, and you get instant feedback as to your performance. And failure is part of athletics.
Right.
And you learn to embrace that and get better. While in a classroom setting, we're terrified of making mistakes, or often are. So of bringing some of that grit, that practical experience, and resiliency into the classrooms in a more, even though I know that's what the teachers want for kids, but the kids don't always do that, is what they'll get out on the athletics field. So how do we go about adding new sports? I get asked this question like all the time. Why don't you offer lacrosse? Or why don't you have field hockey or hockey?
We have recently added some sports, which is really exciting. I think that's actually been a change from when I was here as well. Many of them even started as clubs. Students had interest. We started as a club, and then they gained momentum. And so then we're willing to look at that, first of all, do we have people to compete against? Like, how are we going to set that up structurally? But let's do it if we have students that are interested. Yeah. We've had students who have done fencing. Not as much right now, but there were a group of them at a certain time. Now, with boys volleyball, and that's going to continue to gain momentum. Mountain biking started as a club, and we had so many kids that now we have uniforms and additional coaches.
And cheerleading.
How did I forget cheerleading? Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And just getting more and more students involved, and powerlifting as well.
Yeah. We are a school of about 1185. You can only add so many sports. I also think the way that we've done it have allowed kids to do, can be on a powerlifting team and run track or play basketball. That with cheerleading, they were doing multi-sports at the same time. That we were really creative in how we have started some of these sports on this. So what do we look for in coaches when hiring? I had to say that we're involved in the hiring of any varsity head coach. Been heavily involved in it, actually. For me, yes, X's and O's matter, but not as much as being teachers. Right. And understanding that kids are vulnerable in these spaces, and helping them, as you said, become the continual personal improvement. Right.
And I do think that we worked really closely with our coaches. All of our coaches come loving children and loving sports. Mm-hmm. They come from all sorts of different industries, and we also have a lot of more faculty actually in recent years that have been involved in coaching as well. I think that's always really great to connect kind of the day that they're with the kids, the overall mission, and into sports as well. But I do think, we've worked hard to kind of put additional support around coaches just so that, we can support them as they're working with our students. I think that oftentimes students care more about what their coach thinks than anyone. And I think that we've done a really good job hiring coaches that, don't only, as you said, focus on the X's and the O's, but really try to help our students become better people and figure out what to do when they fail, and really guiding them and coaching them, not only in the sport, but kind of in their character in general.
Yeah. I also think we've worked with our coaches to work on not just setting boundaries, but bringing parents into the mix,
Right.
Encouraging them to be part of the team in the way that we're communicating, the way that we're embracing, talking, including that parents are a pillar of our school and should be respected in that space. I think the academy also gets incorrectly tagged as recruiting athletes.
Right.
One, it doesn't actually make any sense when almost all of our kids come in 6th grade.
Exactly.
I mean, we don't even know, what, like they're, as I always say, they're not even formed. They're just little guys running around,
Yeah, people have approached me about athletic scholarships and just asked how, their child can apply for one. And I just told them that we actually don't have athletic scholarships.
At all. And then NMAA's rules of if you transfer schools after playing on a varsity sport, you have to sit out a year.
Right.
I won't go into my whole litany of how much I disagree with that, but so it, most of our kids who do come into grades 9 or 10 here tend not to be playing sports,
Right.
Or have moved in from out of state. So no, we do not recruit, whatsoever. And in terms of like our balance of competitiveness and inclusivity, I think we've done a decent job with that in terms of, we will have, a varsity JV C team, 8th grade, of trying to give as much opportunity for kids to play. And while it may not be the sport they want to play, if you want to participate in athletics, there's a sport for you.
There is, exactly.
Whether it's cross country or swimming,
wrestling,
football. Yeah, we will track. I mean, this year they have the largest track team in the school's history.
How many are there? Do you know how many?
Yeah,
students?
I think there are like 70 or 80 boys and like 50 girls, maybe a few more. There are tons of kids running every day. So that part's great.
It is fun to see the campus, after the school day ends. It's just still completely filled with students all over the place.
So I also we've invested in our facilities a bit here, from the track to the pool. Some things are just with paint,
right?
Like the gym,
new nets
and scoreboards or uniforms and good equipment. I was very specific about what kind of clay I wanted on the ball fields. But then, we've been really blessed with the gift and our from the Garcias, as well as the grants from the USTA, and redid our tennis courts and put in pickleball courts. For me, if I were to have additional facilities,
right,
I think a turf field with lights would be great, not just for our kids. It would allow us to practice as when the sun went down. We can rent that field.
Sure.
It could it doesn't need water and what have you. Of course, a field house would be great, and some additional court space here as well. Are there facilities that you would like to see us have?
To be honest with you, I've been incredibly impressed as a parent as to when you talk about uniforms. When my own children bring home their uniforms, I am so impressed by, just the equipment and the uniforms that we do provide. I have to say, during the Harper track meet, which I recently attended, I loved that our larger community could all be here together. I think there were 28 schools, if I remember what Taryn Batches said, but being able to share our facilities, because I think that facility is so strikingly beautiful. To get times after kids have run right away, and just to be able to create this beautiful grassy area and space and snack bar. And it was just such a festive event. And I loved it just because, again, we don't charge when people come to our campus for sports. I just love that we're providing additional access to our larger community to come and enjoy watching their kids from their schools run on our campus. But I did stop for a moment during Harper, and I was just standing there thinking, this is beautiful. Yeah. This is such a great moment to bring Albuquerque together. What I've also really appreciated is if you ask Taryn for something that's not working well or additional equipment, she does figure out a way to make that accessible to kids. So, I just love the access that we currently have and the facilities that we currently have.
The one thing I wish we did have were more buses, and that we provided more transportation.
It's hard.
I was struck by that in New Mexico in general.
Sure.
That even if you went to private school, generally your public school buses, you paying taxes, you get the public transportation within range, but that's just not part of the culture here or services here. So renting buses and finding drivers and doing it is just more complicated here than what I was used to.
Right.
And, we would also, we spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on transportation. And it's hard when, I was struck me like we only provide transportation in one direction.
Right.
But yet there were no kids on the bus coming home. So it made no sense to...
Because the parents were all going to watch them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you just... I do think we get it right most of the time. But even if I had a fleet of buses, I don't know if we'd have all of the drivers to do it, because I don't want the coaches driving and coaching.
Sure.
It's just too much pressure on that, and they're tired, and I'd rather have that separated out. But that's the one thing. Also, like the city facilities are kind of far from us. The soccer,
sure,
where they play baseball for that.
Like Nucinda track.
Yeah, yeah. But we've been just so lucky to just have great facilities here. Our pool, come on.
And one of my favorite parts about actually the way our kids are grouped around sports is that they really do create a lot of micro communities for these kiddos. They're doing a lot together outside of school. They go, the baseball team goes to dinners. Right. The track team has little parties together. That it really does create space for students to find connection.
I do wish we had more, we were a little rowdier at games and a little more pride in that way, that the gym would be like just rocking.
Right.
But
we're working on it. The cheerleaders are going to help us.
I get it. And I also know that our kids are doing a lot of things.
Right.
That is part of it. There are very few kids here who my dad used to say, or my dad would say, are in the 3:00 club, that they just leave. They're on their teams, they're in service, they're on the stage, they're playing music, they're drawing, engineers, they're speech and debate. It is just the complexity of their schedules,
right?
Is something. And I like that we're also upping our concessions game a bit.
They were great. That was great at Harper. Yeah. They had hot dogs and pizza, and you could actually stay there and not have to leave to get a meal, which was awesome.
But yeah. So I think on terms of the athletics piece, we have a robust program that kids take advantage of and they participate in. Our coaches care deeply, and they look to improve all of the time. And I actually think it's just really a tough job being a head coach in general. You're on display all of the time, but they're committed, and we don't have a lot of coaching turnover here, which is also just like faculty.
Right.
People are really engaged and love the kids and love the school, and we're lucky to have them. So.
And oftentimes coaches, it's so kind. They'll show up at kids' other sports.
Yeah. Yes.
to watch them in different seasons, which is really lovely.
Yeah.
All right, so we have mailbag still, Julianne, focused on senior projects. So it's May. Seniors have already finished their classes, so they can pursue their senior projects. What's the thinking behind senior projects?
Well, it was well in place before I got here, and I've said this a couple of times. I think the Academy does this better than any school I've ever seen. Do you remember when they started senior projects here?
Well, so I graduated 30 years ago, and I did a senior project, so it's definitely well beyond that.
So seniors can be a little difficult at the end of their senior
They're ready
year.
for a new adventure.
They are. And many of them, while they take AP classes, don't really sit for their APs anymore. And the Academy has managed to create a space for kids to pursue passion outside of school in a concentrated way and still play on their sports and act in their plays and do this so they come back in the afternoons. But we begin sometime in October talking to seniors about this, and half the work is getting your internship, like getting kids to write emails and cold call and be persistent and figure it out. I think it's just such valuable experience. Kids do everything from working at an animal shelter to volunteering at a clinic, working in fixing cars and changing oil. Yeah, writing. Certainly, there's some projects here on campus, and some go out of state and out of country, and then they come back after 5 or 6 weeks. And what I also like is the senior showcase, where they display their work and have conversations. And it's been great. My hope is also that they make some good connections for employment, both for the summer and the summers they come back after college while they're attending college. So it's just, I think it's just a great, healthy way for kids to finish their senior year here. I think the Academy does it beautifully, top to bottom. It's a meaningful experience for kids and a very good use of time.
How often do you get 4 or 5 weeks to explore something you're interested in? I think it's so awesome. I had a friend who worked with one of our students about 3 or 4 years ago. She's a veterinarian in town, and she loved the experience working with the students so much that she's continued to do it every year. So it's a really great way to bring in people from our community and a great way to connect with alumni. A lot of our alumni help out our kiddos as well.
We're here with Alexis Scott, who is one of our newest teachers in the Performing Arts Department. Hello, Alexis.
Hello.
Alexis, tell us a little bit about how you found the Academy and how you moved your life from Philadelphia to Albuquerque.
I think Academy found me. And I'm not sure how to this day. I was in a period of time where I was teaching at a school where I had very little room to think outside of the time I was at the school, but I did know it was time for a next step. And so I started to put some feelers out, and I suddenly had an interview from Albuquerque Academy I did not remember applying to.
We should probably talk about that off air.
But do you mean at the hiring fair?
No. Wait, so this is not a good story?
No, it is. I don't remember us meeting you at the hiring fair.
You didn't. It was through whatever that online
Carney and
Sando.
Oh, they wrote to us about you, and then we wrote you?
Yeah. I had submitted an application, apparently. Because when I looked back, I know this is a very strange answer, because when I looked back through my documents, I had applied through Carney and Sando, but I didn't remember because I was in that busy a space. I ran the theater department for K through 12, and I was I didn't know which hand
there's a
was
lot
right or
going on.
left.
Yeah.
And so I said, that's crazy. That's in New Mexico. I've never been there. And my family's all in the Northeast, and I'm not going to move there, but I guess I'll show up for this Zoom interview. And it was with Richard Hogle, Desiree Lang, and hubby Corbin. And by the end of the interview, I was absolutely in love with them and the school.
Oh.
And then I got the invitation to come and interview in person.
Yeah, I
and
do remember that interview.
I do too.
I do too.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
We do hundreds of interviews.
Yeah.
But that one I do remember, and I remember where you were sitting on the table.
I
Actually.
do too.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it all worked out.
It did work out. I was pretty. It felt like a kind of profound. Some bigger hand was moving me in a new direction.
Yeah. So how did you discover the stage? And and talk a little bit about your own acting, improv, musical theater. What draws you to it?
I have been performing my entire life, whether or not I intended to. So I started, with plays as a really young kid, and I just knew that I was happier when I was doing it. So it was kind of following the joy thing. But I also couldn't foresee a future in which it was a career. So I did not study it in college. I thought that was for bad actors, people who needed to train. And I said, I'm going to be a good person and do theater. So I'm going to study other things. And that's not everyone's path. But then I was out in the world trying to figure out what to do with myself. And I kept going back to, whenever there's not enough joy in my life, I'll go audition for a show. And then it just kept being clear that every time I auditioned for a show, I would get into it, and then I would be happier.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I went, well, what if this was my job?
Right.
And at that point, in my late 20s, I decided to apply to grad school and see if I could get an MFA in acting and find out what a career path looked like. And I got into one, and I've been navigating what professional performing looks like ever since. And often that involves teaching.
Yeah. Sure. So what's a great theater story from when you were on the stage, like some kind of mishap or one of the great, thing everyone has these who have performed. So
Yep.
What are some of your favorites?
One that comes to my mind right away because it was high school. Mm-hmm. So it's on my mind here sometimes. I played the lead defense attorney in Inherit the Wind when I was in high school. It's traditionally a male role, and they gave it to me and put me in a skirt. And the very end of that show, the whole show is a debate between evolution and religion. It's about the Scopes monkey trial.
Okay.
So the whole play, it's 2-act play, the whole thing happens, and my character is supposed to be left on stage with the Bible and Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. Mm-hmm. And the last paragraph, it's just stage directions, picks up both books, weighs them, and places them equally together in the bag, walks off to take the train. So one day, my co-star who was playing the Reverend had an actor revelation moment when he was leaving the stage. Oh, why would I leave a Bible on the table I should take that with me.
Which is
just a flash of genius. And then
Right.
the guy who was playing the reporter, the people start leaving the stage, and my character's arguing with the reporter, and he says, well, it says here in the Bible, it says it, where is the Bible? Well, anyway, it says in the Bible that,
Right.
and suddenly my brain starts going 3,000 miles a minute. There's no Bible. Where's the Bible? Where is the Bible? What is this? what is this whole play going to lead up to?
Right.
Just me on a stage. So everyone slowly left me until I picked up Origin of Species. And luckily the character who's supposed to have left the Bible, the prosecution attorney, had left a hat and he just died in the story. So I picked up the hat and I had a nice little gesture towards, the great unknown. And then I quickly tried to put the hat in my bag. It didn't fit, and I just walked off the stage.
Very good.
And I remember going right off the stage and saying, "Where's the Bible?"
High drama.
High drama.
So how do you go about selecting plays or musical, and how do they do it at the Academy?
Well, in my 3 years here, I have observed a definite sense of collaboration in the current team. We like to make sure that there is exposure to diversity for the students. So if a student starts in 8th grade and follows through with theater until 12th grade, they will hopefully be exposed through plays and musicals to a variety of forms and time periods and writing styles. So when I'm choosing something, I'm paying attention to what did we just do and what we do before that and what haven't they gotten to practice yet.
Sure.
And also, so I have a tendency to want to make things relevant, and that is not always what a student body needs. I want to interrogate the human condition, what we're taking in the world, because art is so good at doing that. And sometimes what the students need is 2 months of laughing. They need to not be interrogating the human condition at that time. And they secretly do by laughing together. But the musical is a larger process because you're involving the musicians, the people who are going to vocal coach, the choreographer, and then the people putting it all together. And so we want to make sure there's agreement in all those teams. And I have a tendency to want to choose things that get the student body excited. And that can look like a variety of things.
Yeah. I mean, one of the kind of challenges is that the newer musicals don't have large casts.
No, they don't.
So
newer plays don't either.
And yes, because it's so expensive to do this, all of this. But for us, we want maximum participation or the ability to participate in a whole host of ways. So when the shows are like 8 characters and the piano, bass, and drums, we're like, that's not going to do it for us.
Nope.
So we're like, Oklahoma,
right?
Guys and dolls.
Get the
South
most people
Pacific.
on stage.
Right. Most people on stage, right?
And also, but then there's, the further you go back, often you end up.
Right. It gets scary too.
It gets scary, and you end up having kids. I mean, there are certain, there was a point in my own theatrical journey where I went, oh, I hate every role for women that's ever been written. And that's when I started doing new theater.
Right.
So I try to, in my classes right now, I try to expose them to a lot of new stuff. And so then they're I actually had a student this year say to me, can we please do a new play, something like Chekhov?
Wow.
And I was like,
okay.
Oh, I think I've missed a connection somewhere.
Right.
Chekhov's not new. But yes, it is a challenge to keep it. They ask me every year, can we please do such and such musical? And I'm like, yeah, do you want to be one of the 4 characters in it?
Right.
Sounds like a really fun time for 4 people.
Right. So how do you see the acting program at Academy? From now, you've taught in 6th grade, and you've directed the musical and the 1 acts, and have advised in 8, 9. So you've had the full gamut. What do you hope the kids get out of their experience in performing arts here?
I hope that every kid who touches theater in any way, which because of sixth grade is it, all of them.
All of them.
All of them. I hope that they learn that there is always a space to play. And there is always, in the midst of a world that is asking them to succeed based on whatever that looks like for their family or what they're taking in from the outside world, that there is a place where they can try things on, put the stress down, and explore the width of their own character. And I like to instill the fact that, you know, theater is a place where you full of freedom and discipline, and that it requires both of those. And that kind of, and that's what creativity requires. It requires showing up every day and also letting go of your expectations of what that looks like. So my hope is that it is rare for, it is, you know, there's a tiny percentage of young people that go on to do anything professionally in the theater. But hiring a theater kid is the most brilliant thing that you can do, because ideally these kids are getting exposed to what it looks like to collaborate, communicate, forgive, expand their compassion, and tell stories.
When I was building our team at my previous school, I pilfered the arts department.
Wow.
And I think of the 5 deans, I had a residential dean, 4 of them came from or still taught somewhat in the arts. So much so we had to hire more people because they can handle the mess and the chaos and they can make something out of nothing.
Exactly.
And they were amazing with, like, when we started dances, and, you know, kids don't like huge space, right? When you do a dance, you have to make it small. And how they made these mirror things. I was like, oh my gosh. And I'll just share this. We did this music. The arts weren't as big in the Middle East, right? Yeah. But we started from nothing and built this program, and then we did this Jordanian orchestra, JYMC, the youth orchestra, and our stage wasn't big enough, and we were having like 80 kids come, and it was a Thursday. We went to school, Sunday through Thursday, but the deans, who are now pretty seasoned, were like, hey, this is about the size of the exam tables. And we brought in all of the exam tables and zip tied them together, put it out over the front row. And of course, because you're in Jordan, like, things can happen like this way. They rugged it. They got put the whole thing. So they built a set. Built an entire stage in a couple of hours and could do it. And it was always like that kind of like can do, the creativity, the intellect, and like, hey, the show must go on. And how I've always loved that like kind of spirit as well. So
I think it's
yes, hire theater kids or musicians. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, because there's this transition that starts to happen. I see when young people stay with the performing arts, and where they come into my class saying, how do I do this right? And I slowly break down the idea that there is no right. There's doing doing well for you, but there's no right in the room.
Yeah. Tell us a little, we have about your musical theater class.
Oh, my musical theater class, which I have to give credit to Desiree Ling, designed the class essentially, and then due to scheduling, it became mine. And I teach it with Helen Belaix, who accompanies me on piano. And it is a robust and ridiculous room. No matter how many kids are in it.
They're just standing around with their books singing, walking around, singing at the top of their lungs. But then when you were like, okay, now we're going to perform this piece, or they're like mute.
Exactly. Well, and also the same ones that are the loudest in the hall outside my office are the ones going, oh, I don't think I want to.
Not today.
Yeah, not today. But I need to practice more. And I'm like, where? But that's the moment you shine a spotlight, people get scared.
But you're so gentle with them and don't get frustrated because they're belting it out 10 feet from you.
Right, because I know they're capable.
Right.
I know they're capable. And my secret that I share with them is that musical theater is the scariest thing in the world to me. I grew up doing it. And then I got to a certain point where I just went, well, I loved performing, and I have a nice voice. Mm-hmm. I have a nice voice that, hits all the notes very, very prettily. I have no power in me, so there was no career for me. But staying, I know what it's like to stand up there and go, I think I should have worn a diaper today. And they do that. They get so scared. They're going to throw up. They want to run to the bathroom. And I'm like, it's all right. Do it and it will feel better.
Right.
Because the not doing it is actually the worst part of performing.
I thought the singing in this year's show, The Theory of Relativity, was really exceptionally strong. The harmonies, their tone, the confidence in it, but really in some of the complexity, really, really outstanding. And yet the stage was very simple. There wasn't as much movement, if you will, or the complexity of like dance or this. But the singing carried the show.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what, the simplicity of the show allowed the students to really focus on their voices. And they had great coaches.
Mm-hmm. So what's the favorite part of being at Academy, or what are some things you love about being at Academy?
I love the theatrical resources.
That's awesome.
University level stuff.
Oh, good.
I love my kids. I think I get self-selected theater weirdos. They're my people. So, I love them. I love working with Richard Hogel. And I love the kindness that I feel on this campus, which I think everyone has their own experience. I walk around and have a sense of community.
And so how has the transition, although it's a couple of years now, to New Mexico been for you?
It's getting easier. The people have always been warm to me. I was very disoriented by the desert landscape because I have never, in all the places I've lived, it's never been a desert, and my body did not know where it was for a full year.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
Okay. My skin is still so dry.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
It's just like
true.
It is unbelievably dry.
I cannot hydrate this physical shell. I can't do it. But I knew right away that it was a special place. I've never lived in any place like Albuquerque or New Mexico. So it went from feeling really strange and foreign to feeling like curiously tender or something. Like, oh, wow, what a special experience.
Yeah. Here's a harder question.
Okay.
And, as in teaching in the various disciplines, it changes over time, or it evolves. How has theater evolved, or the teaching of acting or improv changed since you were a kid to now? And where do you see it going?
It's a great question. I often see things through the lens of gender because I think of being in a, growing up female experience and having stories given to me, like I was saying before, written by men and not feeling represented. And that was a lot of what I think of like the monologues that I learned when I was a kid that got a lot of laughs. They were very like, there's one from Star Spangled Banner from, I think it's Neil Simon, and it's like, oh, I have a Southern accent and I'm trying to be so nice to you. And it's just so funny, and I got really, what was canon, I think, has changed. That now in theater teaching, in acting teaching, we're allowed to interrogate, well, what stories matter, and how do we teach to the people in the room? And how can it also be, how can we use all of these really brilliant techniques that people have established over time and not make it traumatic?
Right.
Right.
We can find emotional recall without saying, what was your hardest day? And can you live there again? It's like, well, you know what it's like to have a hard day, so let's relate to that. But this isn't therapy. Acting's not therapy. And also, I like to, something that I think I wish I had been told, I like to tell them, which is that here are a bunch of tools, here are a bunch of ways to tell a story. Make your own. This is just, learn this so that you can talk about it. But the next form hasn't been invented yet, probably. So this is how to write a play, but go break it,
So do you like any, or did you explore any of the other arts, whether playing an instrument or painting or, sculpture, what have you?
I did it all. I did not do sculpture. But I was a dancer for about 14 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Ballet was my life in high school. And I was a visual art kid who did the plays. So drawing, my parents thought I was going to go into drawing and painting. And I play the piano.
Nice.
Yeah. And I loved that when you're a kid, you have time to do all of the arts in one day.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I thought for a period of time in my 20s, I was like, how do I do that again? Oh, maybe I should be an elementary school teacher because you get to do all those things. So I tried that for a couple of years, and it was not the same as being an artist.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I love about playing an instrument is that, when if you're an actor, you either need an audience or somebody else.
Yes.
But but in the visual arts, particularly with sketching or painting or playing a guitar or other, you can
do it
at any time.
Yep.
And it is just like a companion in a way. It's just, and it's lifelong.
And I think it's actually the inverse of that kept me coming back to theater, because when I first went to college, I was going to study writing. I wanted to be in creative writing. And I very quickly realized I'm going to be really lonely if most of my assignments are alone in my room. I better get in a couple of theater classes to make sure that I have friends.
Right. Right.
And then that has persisted, but it's then fast forward, that's what makes it challenging to teach, because it is a collaborative art form, and I'm bored by myself. Sure, my own ideas I think they're great, but they're just one set of ideas. So I have to train the students to become my collaborators so that we're co-creating.
All right, Alexis, this is the part of our show that we call the lightning round. I am going to give you a pair of words.
Okay.
And you tell me the one that you identify with.
Okay. Identify with?
Well,
or like?
How about like?
Okay, great.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
This is simple. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Musical or plays?
Plays.
Pepperoni or sausage?
Neither.
I made that up because you just said pizza toppings, and it's not a pair.
But you went with all meat.
I know. I generally don't.
I don't
So you ready?
I don't eat pork.
Right. Yeah, I knew that.
Sorry.
You're living in the wrong state, sister.
Tell me about it.
Okay. Okay. Instead, red or green?
Oh, green.
Yeah, it's much better.
So much
Though I've
better.
been making my own red chili sauce like once a week now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not as people that I make it for love it. I prefer green in general.
Great.
Okay, back.
I'll try your red.
Favorite spot on campus?
The backstage.
Our backstage is amazing.
It's the best.
It really is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole wood shop.
I know. And a prop room beyond that.
Yes, that prop room's a little scary and massive, but
And
it's there.
organized,
Better.
despite how it looks.
All right. Alexis, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we are so lucky to have you at the Academy.
Thanks for having me today and for keeping me around.
Hey, and thanks for answering the email that got you the Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah, right?
Thank the weird spirit that.
I know.
I love that story.
Yeah, and thanks to my my hiring committee, who were just the best humans on earth.
Well, they are. Okay. I want to thank Christine. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Julianne.
For our discussion about athletics today, and as well as our special guest and friend, Alexis Scott. We're fortunate to be part of a team that cares so deeply about education. Go Chargers!
Go Chargers.
Thanks for listening to What I Learned in School to learn a little bit about Albuquerque Academy. Send us your comments and questions to headofschool@aa.edu. You can listen to all of our episodes on our website at aa.edu and wherever you get your podcasts.